Hello, and thanks for joining me today. My name is Craig Pence, and I'm the Vice President here at Neustar responsible for our risk business. For the next 10 minutes or so, I'm going to be sharing over a decade of learnings and best practices that Neustar has developed in working with hundreds of U.S. brands across the financial services, insurance, retail, healthcare, utility, and other direct-to-consumer verticals in order to help you understand, one, how to mitigate the TCPA risks associated with phone type and reassigned numbers, and two, introduce additional data elements that are proving to help our clients optimize their dialing strategy and increase contact rates. So, with those two goals in mind, I want to provide a very quick primer on TCPA. The TCPA Act was passed in 1991 with the goal of eliminating unwanted calls, which was then and remains today the #1 consumer complaint to the FCC. In 1995, a declaratory ruling was issued by the FCC in an effort to provide clarity around many of the Act's rules and regulations. Unfortunately, in many cases, rather than providing clarity, the ruling introduced added confusion and opened the doors to an unexpected flood of litigious activity. In fact, the U.S. Chamber Institute on Legal Reform has identified 3,121 lawsuits that have been filed since the declaratory ruling's release in August of 2015. In the 17-month period from the ruling's release in 2015 through the end of 2016, those cases represent a 46% increase in the number of TCPA lawsuits when compared to the 17 months that led up to the declaratory ruling's release. Nearly every one of these cases can be categorized into one of four key areas of risk, two of which I'm going to be addressing and sharing best practices on, and two that I won't. The two that I won't be discussing today involve how you capture and maintain consent and the type of technology that you're using to make those calls. The topics I will be addressing are first, phone type, which is understanding the type of phone tied to the consumer you're calling, wireline, wireless, or VoIP, and second, identifying reassigned numbers and confirming the number that you're dialing still belongs to the consumer that provided you consent to call them. These two subjects will be my main focus today in the area where Neustar has invested significant resources to help our clients mitigate risk. So now that we have a primer on the challenges TCPA compliance represents, let's dive into the best practices to help mitigate the risks associated with phone type and reassigned phone numbers. First, on phone type. Prior to 2013, and certainly before the declaratory ruling in 2015, the lion's share of our efforts as it pertained to helping companies mitigate TCPA risk was via our provisioning of the wireless do not call file. As the administrator of local number portability, we produce a daily file that many of you are familiar with that informs callers as to the change in the status of a phone number from one equipment type to another, most notably consumers that port their wireline phones to wireless. So as you can see, step one in this process, we're looking at a phone type chart. This is an analysis that we provide to our customers. As you can see, there's a distribution of about 70 to 30 between wireless and landline, which is what we see is pretty close to the norm. But the one area I do want to focus in on is this over-the-top VoIP inside the landline population. So this 15% of numbers are actually quite risky, and we advise our clients to treat those numbers the same as they treat wireless numbers, because there is existing case law that says if it is a pay-per-call service, then those numbers are treated the same as wireless numbers from a TCPA perspective. After ensuring you understand the type of phone you're dialing comes the challenge of identifying reassigned numbers. The current regulations allow one get-out-of-jail-free dial in order to attempt to establish ownership, and that is clearly not a solution to this challenge. While there is no silver bullet here, we have invested tremendous amounts of time and resources to build a service to identify reassigned phone numbers. And what we're looking at on the chart on the right is our ownership verification service to do just that. So our customers query us with the consumer's name and a consent date, so the date that they received the consent to dial that consumer, and then there are additional optional pieces of data that can be included, such as address. The whole service begins with a waterfall, and the first thing we're looking at is, has that phone been disconnected, and has that linkage between the consumer and that phone been broken since the consumer provided consent? And that is rule number 2, phone service discontinued. Now, an important thing to note here is disconnect status is based upon a disconnect file that is put out by the carriers. There is a lot of noise in that file. Through analysis that we've done, we've seen upwards of 50% of those numbers not actually being verified disconnect events. They are things like ports and snapbacks, where the relationship between the consumer and the phone number hasn't changed, so therefore there's no real risk in continuing to dial that phone from a TCPA perspective. So then, once we verify that there has not been a discontinued service event since the date of consent, we then can waterfall through looking at the relationship between the consumer and the phone number. And this is very helpful, especially for customers who have data that is very, very aged and they've had the relationship between that consumer and that phone number for a long time. So this service allows customers to have the flexibility to incorporate our business rules into their dialing strategy, and each customer has a different threshold for risk as far as what they're going to dial and what they won't dial. But most of our customers dial 10s through 5s, some dial 3s, and obviously 1s are the highest risk, where we actually have a different name associated with that consumer. Now that we've addressed getting accurate phone type and ownership data applied to the numbers you dial, I'd like to briefly touch on ways we're helping our clients to improve their dialing strategies. Early on, as we began working with clients to help with the identification of likely reassigned numbers, we introduced an additional attribute tied to the call activity we see for a given phone number based upon the delivery of those caller name services. Simply put, when we verify a name and a phone are linked and we observe consistent calls being made from that phone number, we also see a strong correlation to our clients in getting that customer to answer a call. Building from that, we've introduced 2 additional services that are helping our clients improve contact rates, and based upon the collections use case outlined here, drive promises to pay. Those services are a best time to dial score and a verified phone append offering. And finally, we've also introduced a verified phone append solution. This service looks at a phone number or numbers that a client already has, and then whenever possible appends a net new number or numbers that Neustar has verified as belonging to the consumer you're trying to reach. By combining these 4 powerful predictors, which are phone ownership verification, call activity, best time to dial, and finally verified phone append, we're helping our clients not only mitigate TCPA risk, but also improve their dialing strategy. As a result, and as you can see on this slide, by leveraging the solutions I've just outlined, we've helped one large bank increase rate party contact rates by 9%, promises to pay by 16%, and ultimately collect $15 million more per year without increasing the total number of dials they needed. So I'd like to thank everybody for their time today, and just to serve as a quick recap, phone data is in a constant state of change, and there is no silver bullet to solve for the TCPA risks associated with reassigned phone numbers. So understanding ownership goes far beyond simply looking at a disconnect file. It is certainly an important piece of the overall solution, but truly understanding the connection between a consumer and their phone number can't be solved by just looking at disconnect data. And then finally, the ability to work with a partner who can layer in additional actionable attributes can actually help optimize the dialing strategy that you're employing. So once again, thank you very much for your time today. If anyone would like to reach me, you can see my email address here, or please feel free to visit our website at neustar.biz/TCPA to read more about the solutions that I discussed today. Thank you very much.